Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Dragon's Waterfall, where we discuss the world of Saint Seiya. And what I want to do this time is to make a few hypotheses and try to discuss what we can expect from the second half of the 12 Parasis arc, which apparently is due to arrive later this year, 2023. Now, this video will contain partial spoilers because I will be referring to the original series, but of course I don't have a crystal ball, so I cannot foresee what's gonna happen in the future. Everything I'm going to say are my hypotheses, except for things that are based on the original anime or manga. So, if you don't want to be spoiled, stop here, but otherwise, let's go. And at the moment, in the Knights of the Zodiac series, we have arrived at the Libra Palace, where Hyoga has been just freed from the ice prison. Andromeda Sean is about to try to help Hyoga after the after effects of the freezing coffin, whilst Seiya and Shiryu are fighting against Miro in the Scorpio Temple. Now, what eventually happens is that Sean uses his maximum Cosmo to revive Hyoga, who's been still half frozen to death, and then Hyoga is the one to battle against Miro. In the original series, Hyoga doesn't quite fully defeat Miro, but he manages to impress Miro enough that the Scorpio Saint eventually allows him to pass and go on towards the Sagittarius Palace. So I expect a battle between Hyoga and Miro to also happen in the Knights series. That's because so far the Knights series has been quite faithful in adapting the battles from the original manga, so I don't think it will go off the rails right now. However, it's possible that a few things will change, especially about what happens to Miro after the fight. We've seen so far that the Knights series doesn't like to leave Gold Knights standing. It always tries, or it always appears to try, to find a way to take them out of the equation and to justify why the Gold Knights aren't acting anymore. So, for example, at the end of the battle in the Rio Palace, we see Miro fight against Ayoria and eventually defeat him. And this is something that's original to the Netflix series and didn't happen in the old anime or manga. Likewise, it's possible that something like that will happen to Miro to explain why he doesn't follow Hyoga along. It's possible that either the fish knight Aphrodite or the Capricorn knight Shura will somehow intervene and take out Miro. However, it's also possible that Miro will simply stay behind, because even though he lets Hyoga go on, he's not fully with the Bronze Saints yet. So it's possible that we will just stay behind and see what happens, basically. But I wouldn't be surprised if someone appears to battle against Miro in the Scorpio Temple and eventually defeats him, just like Miro defeated Ayoria in the Rio Temple. Then we have the Sagittarius, and I expect that to be a very short stint, a very short part of an episode, not even a full episode. In the original anime, the Sagittarius Temple was a little bit of a death trap, with a number of traps reminiscent a little bit of in old Indiana Jones movies or the Tomb Raider movies, which of course are much more recent than the original anime. But in the original manga, the Sagittarius Temple is very straightforward, with the Bronze Knights finding an inscription that has been left behind by Aioros. Basically, Aioros entrusts an Athena to them, and they are moved by his final words and then go on. Considering how things have been depicted so far, I think that the same will happen now in the new series, in the Knights series, and that the Seiya and his friends will read this inscription and move on, possibly discovering a little bit more about Aioros, but I don't think there will be much time spent in the Sagittarius Temple. Then we arrive in the Capricorn Temple, and in the original series, Capricorn Shura is the enemy that Dragon Shiryu fights. And it all ends with Shiryu using his most powerful technique, the Rosan Koryuha, which is basically a suicidal kamikaze move, taking both himself and the Capricorn Saint out, burning in the outer atmosphere. I wouldn't be surprised if this is somewhat toned down in the Night series. That's because the original battle in the Capricorn Temple is a very violent one. Shura's weapon is the Holy Sword Excalibur, which rests in his right arm, or in both of his arms and legs, really. And Shiryu suffers a number of very severe injuries and bleeds a lot. In the original anime, he even cuts off Shura's right arm just before taking him out. But I think the Knights series will be much more child-friendly and the battle will be much less violent. I wonder whether they will show a suicidal move, just because this is something that in today's day and age isn't really as glorified as it used to be in the 80s. The focus seems to have shifted from taking the enemy out at all costs to try to find an understanding. So I wouldn't be completely surprised if the ending is completely changed and Shiryu doesn't even attempt to sacrifice his life against Shura, or perhaps he may attempt to do so, but eventually Shura might save him and stop the Rosen Koryuha before it's executed. So I wouldn't be completely surprised if Shura survives. And that's also because in the CGI movie Knights of the Zodiac, Legend of the Sanctuary, which came out decades ago in 2004, I think, off the top of my head, but in that movie the Capricorn Knight survives. Having said that, Shura dying is also very important moving forward for a number of reasons I won't go into right now because I don't want to spoil you too much, so it's all a little bit up in the air in my opinion. But either way, I think the battle will be nowhere near as bloody and violent as the original one was. Next we have the Aquarius Temple, and of course I expect a rematch between Hyoga and Kamyu, the Aquarius God Knight. I think this will be very similar to what happened in the original series, with both taking each other out. It's one of the temples I expect the least changes from, and I think it will be a pretty straightforward battle. The original battle between Hyoga and Kamyu only took one episode, and I think likewise this will be a pretty short fight. Things will get much more interesting in the Pisces, or the Fishes Palace, because that's gonna be Andromeda Sean's next and final battle. And unlike the original series, this time in the Knights of the Zodiac, Sean knows that her master has been killed by the Pisces Saint Aphrodite. So a fight between the two of them is a given. The unknown quantity this time will be Sean's childhood friend and chameleon saint, June. I think her name has been changed into Garmay or something like that in the Night series. But anyway, it's very likely that she will play a role somehow, just because she's been present throughout most of the 12 Palaces arc, running alongside Marin and Mu and Aldebaran. So I think, considering Diderot's final words to her, I think it's likely that she will somehow play a role in the battle between Sean and Aphrodite. However, I would just wonder how big of a role it will be. If she were to play too big a role and to be a crucial factor in Sean's victory, then this would undermine Sean herself. But if she doesn't do anything at all, then her role so far in the series would have been wasted. So I'm quite curious to see how the writers of Knights of the Zodiac will climb themselves out of the hole they've just dug themselves into. Probably the better option would be for Garmet to just help Sean a little bit, but not be too instrumental in her victory. But either way, I don't think Sean is going to walk out of the Pisces Temple. I don't mean she's gonna die, but I think she will be exhausted at the end of the fight, or unable to go on, just like the original Shun was in the manga. This leaves Seiya fighting against the Pope, the Master of the Sanctuary. And of course, everyone who knows Knights of the Zodiac already knows that the true identity of the Pope is that of the Gemini Knight saga. In the original series, Seiya eventually manages to survive just long enough to reach the shield of Athena and make the golden arrow disappear. And this also happens thanks to Ikki's arrival, because just Ikki is taken back to Earth by Shaka and Mu and fights alongside Seiya against Saga. I think this is also gonna happen in the Night series, but I wonder how they will rectify the battle between the Master, Mu and Aldebaran happening at Star Hill, which we saw at the end of the season 2 of the anime. Probably, I think this might help and explain how the Gold Knights learn about the true identity of the Master, but in this version of the story there are still a few unknown quantities. For example, we know that the Master apparently has seen a prophecy in the Crateris scroll, prophesying the failure of Athena and the victory of Hades and Poseidon. So I wonder whether this prophecy will be proven to be wrong or to just have been made up by the Master, or whether there is some truth to it. This will be quite interesting to see, because it's one of the most original and new ideas that have been introduced in the Knights of the Zodiac series. So it wasn't present in the original one, and it will be definitely interesting to see what happens and how they explain it. Mu and Aldebaran will of course be proven to be alive. There's no way they have been killed off by the Grandmaster. And likewise, as I just mentioned earlier, Shaka will come back to life, or rather we'll find out he never died. He was just taken out of the equation temporarily and moved to another dimension. And I expect all of this to happen in this series as well. There's no way they will get rid of 3 important characters, such as Mu, Aldebaran and Shaka. And finally, I don't think I'm really spoiling anyone when I say that Seiya and his friends will defeat Saga and win the day. It's an anime, of course they're gonna win. So these are my hypotheses. I don't think there will be too many big changes, but I think there will be some interesting ones here and there. For those of you who know the original series, what do you think? Do you expect any change at all, or do you think it will all be very faithful to the original manga with not much else added? Write down here in the comments your thoughts, and as usual, hit the notification bell, subscribe to the channel, and keep following the wonderful world of Saint Seiya. See you next time. Bye!